Hey guys, tonight we step into a tale that begins in the soft hush of twilight, where even the smallest things have voices, if you lean close enough. Imagine your sandals crunching along a quiet path, and just when you think it's your stomach grumbling, you realize it's the stones beneath your feet, mumbling like old men arguing over a chessboard. You probably won't survive this, unless you count drifting off into the gentlest sleep of your week as survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, drop your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing the tiny constellation of where we're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.
The story begins with you wandering into a castle garden, just as the evening sky folds itself into deep blue velvet. At first, the path feels ordinary, gravel pressed down by centuries of footsteps, a few stray weeds sprouting where gardeners forgot to kneel. But then, there's a sound, like whispers just below your hearing. You pause, thinking maybe it's the breeze or the guards gossiping behind the hedge. Yet when you crouch down, ear close to the ground, the voices sharpen. The pebbles themselves are talking. They don't argue about politics or taxes, thank goodness, but instead they share small stories. One pebble grumbles about being kicked by boots all day. Another brags that a royal dog once picked it up and dropped it near the fountain. A third pebble insists it has seen 300 sunsets and counts itself an expert on sky colors. You laugh under your breath. It's oddly like scrolling through social media comments, except with fewer conspiracy theories. The princess of this tale, a young woman with a quiet nature and an ear sharper than most, kneels beside you. She too has heard the whispers all her life, though she learned early on to keep it secret. After all, most people don't want to hear their shoes critiqued by rocks. Folklorists still argue whether this gift comes from old enchantments laid upon the land or simply from a royal bloodline, cursed or blessed with extra curiosity. Historically, stones have played strange roles in tales. In Norse myth, some stones were believed to house protective spirits. In the Middle Ages, people even thought certain talking stones could predict the future, though more often they just confused the poor listeners. And here, in this garden, your own ears confirm the ancient superstition. Stones do, in fact, have opinions. The pebbles chatter most loudly when moonlight strikes them, as though silver light loosens their tongues. One even sighs dramatically, saying it longs to be part of a great cathedral wall rather than lying in a dusty path. Another pebble responds, "Trust me, kid, being a cathedral block isn't glamorous. You get pigeons." You chuckle, unable to resist imagining little stone personalities, each with its own complaints and quirks. There's a strange comfort in their voices. While people argue endlessly about politics, the pebbles debate simple matters: which rainstorm felt the softest, whether moss tickles, or who had the best view of the rose bush last spring. It's the kind of conversation that pulls you away from modern worries, like a podcast dedicated solely to daydreams. Still, not everyone in the castle knows what you and the princess hear. Folklore scholars would debate this for hours. Is the ability to hear pebbles a form of madness, or is madness pretending you can't hear them? And here you are, standing in twilight, realizing that sometimes the simplest truth is the strangest one. As the night deepens, the whispers grow gentler, more like lullabies than chatter. You find yourself leaning closer, lulled not only by the words, but by the rhythm of their speech, steady, patient, unhurried, like waves brushing the shore. The princess glances at you, half smiling, as if to say, "Welcome to my world of impossible secrets." You realize then that you've crossed into a story where the ground itself has memory, and the smallest pebble beneath your foot has something to tell you, if only you'll listen long enough.
The next evening, you wander back along that same winding path, curiosity tugging at you like a loose thread on a sweater. Tonight, the air feels thicker, as if the garden itself is holding its breath. The pebbles are quieter at first, like shy children waiting to be coaxed into conversation, until a soft giggle breaks out beneath your heel. You nearly trip, not from fear, but because it's absurd, like stepping on a whoopee cushion of gravel. The princess appears again, slipping from behind a column with her hair catching moonlight like spilled milk. She doesn't speak right away. Instead, she tilts her head, listening. Then she nods, confirming what you already guessed. The stones are whispering secrets directly to her. She was born with ears that catch not just the words of people, but the murmurs of earth itself. Some say it was a gift bestowed by a fairy who once laid a pebble in her cradle. Others insist her lineage carries an old echo of druids, guardians of stone circles and sacred grounds. Historians can't agree which tale holds truth, though, let's be honest, historians also argue over whether the Middle Ages began in the 5th or the 6th century, so maybe we don't trust them as referees here. When she was a child, her parents worried. After all, it's awkward at royal dinners when your daughter stares at the floorboards because she swears the stones are telling knock-knock jokes. To keep appearances, the king insisted she practice court etiquette, though she often excused herself with the line, "Sorry, father, the tiles are roasting me again." Imagine trying to explain that at a diplomatic banquet. But with age, she's grown into her strangeness. Tonight, she tells you the pebbles by the castle gate gossip the most. They claim to know every visitor by their footsteps alone. Heavy boots of soldiers, delicate slippers of noblewomen, even the uneven thump of a traveling jester whose shoe was always one lace short. You can't help but laugh. It's basically medieval ring camera security. The princess crouches, placing her ear close to the stones. You mimic her, feeling ridiculous, but soon the voices slip into your hearing too. They're scratchy, like a record that's been played one too many times, but still clear enough. One pebble sighs dramatically. Oh no, not another prince trying to prove himself. His shoes squeak like frightened mice. Another chuckles. Better than yesterday's merchant who smelled like cabbage. There is an odd intimacy in this world of stone chatter. You begin to understand why the princess treasures it, even when others dismiss it. The voices root her to something older than crowns and councils, an earth that remembers, observes, and refuses to be silent. A little-known tidbit drifts into her words. She explains how, in some corners of folklore, stones were thought to carry souls between worlds, ferrying whispers from the dead to the living. That makes you glance down at the gravel with new respect, and, maybe, a hint of unease. After all, nobody likes the idea of a pebble beneath their boot muttering, "I once knew Julius Caesar." Yet the princess shrugs it off. For her, the whispers aren't ghosts. They're company. They remind her she's never truly alone, even in the vast corridors of a castle that sometimes feels emptier than a forgotten attic. And as she says this, you notice her eyes soften. The gift is less about hearing stones and more about hearing something, anything, that doesn't demand she be royal, perfect, or proper. You glance back toward the path. A pebble near your heel grumbles, "Don't lean too hard, you're crushing me." Another pebble interrupts, "He's exaggerating, we're tough as, well, stone." You laugh quietly, knowing full well you'll never be able to take gravel for granted again. The night hums on. The princess rises, brushing dust from her gown, and for a moment she looks less like royalty and more like someone who simply wants to belong. Her secret gift, ridiculous though it may sound, binds her closer to the ground beneath her kingdom than any crown ever could. And in the cool stillness of evening, you realize you've just stepped deeper into a story that refuses to behave like ordinary tales. The following day brings a clearer sky, the kind that feels like it's been freshly scrubbed just for you. The castle gardens glow brighter, though the air hums with something unseen, like a stage before the curtain rises. You walk with the princess toward the riverbank, a place she insists holds the best conversations. "Pebbles near water," she whispers, "always have the juiciest stories." You're not sure if she's joking, but you follow anyway. The river runs wide and gentle, its surface catching the light like a silver sheet fluttering in the wind. Along the bank, pebbles glisten in wet rows, waiting, you imagine, like an eager audience. The moment you crouch down, the murmurs start again, clearer here than anywhere else. It's almost like the water polishes not just their surfaces, but their voices. "Ah, a new listener," a plump pebble exclaims in a squeaky voice. "We don't get fresh ears often." Another sighs theatrically. "Finally, someone who isn't a heron stepping on us all day." The princess giggles softly and dips her fingers into the water, as though stroking the river itself. She has grown so used to these conversations, but you still feel the delightful absurdity, like you've stumbled into a group chat where even rocks have strong opinions. One pebble, round and mossy, clears its throat with unnecessary drama. "I've seen travelers from far-off kingdoms, merchants who carried spices, sailors with stories, even a wandering monk who argued with us about philosophy until sunset." You blink. The idea of a monk debating with stones feels laughable, yet also perfectly possible. After all, monks debated everything, even how many angels could dance on a pin. Why not include pebbles? Here comes your first historical anchor. In ancient Greek thought, rivers themselves were considered gods, guardians of land and people. Their stones, too, were seen as fragments of divine presence. A quirky tidbit adds to the mix. In parts of old Japan, children once collected smooth stones as offerings to comfort spirits of the lost. Scholars, of course, still argue whether such customs were purely symbolic or if people genuinely believed pebbles could hold memory. You, however, don't need convincing. The chatter beneath your feet proves it. As you listen, you catch odd details. A stone near your sandal claims it once traveled down from a mountain glacier, tumbling for centuries until it reached this river's bend. Another boasts of being carried briefly in a king's pocket before being tossed aside. You nod politely, as though attending a family reunion where every cousin insists their story is the most important. Then a quieter pebble pipes up, voice smooth and melodic. "I remember a girl who wept here once, long before you were born. Her tears fell into me, and I carried her sorrow for years." The princess grows still, her expression softening. You feel the story sink deeper, proof that not every stone is a clown or a gossip. Some hold fragments of lives long gone, their voices as fragile as pressed flowers. A breeze drifts over the river, carrying the faint smell of reeds and wet earth. The princess finally breaks the silence. "This is why I keep coming here," she says. "The pebbles by the river aren't just chatter. They remember things. They keep the kingdom's history safer than books, though no one listens." You realize she's right. Scrolls burn, ink fades, but the stones endure, stubborn and unyielding. For a moment the voice is quiet, as if they sense your respect. Then, like comedians unable to resist the stage, two pebbles start bickering.
One insists it was skipped across the water by a prince with excellent aim. The other shouts, "No, it was me. I'm far flatter than you." You can't help but laugh out loud, startling a heron that takes off with an indignant squawk. The princess grins too, brushing her gown and shaking her head. As twilight drapes itself across the river, you sense that this strange gift, the ability to hear the chatter of stones, connects the princess not just to her land, but to every story her people have forgotten. You follow her back toward the castle, Pebbles chuckling softly on the water behind you, and it feels like leaving a gathering of eccentric old friends.
By the time you return to the castle, the corridors feel strangely alive, as if the walls themselves are trying to eavesdrop on you. The princess leads you deeper inside, past hanging tapestries and the smell of beeswax candles. Her slippers make the faintest sound against the flagstones, yet you know those stones are listening too. Tonight, she wants to show you something hidden, a part of the castle no one else thinks about, though it's literally beneath their feet. You descend a narrow staircase that curls like a snail's shell, the air growing cooler, thicker, almost damp. At the bottom, the floor stretches wide, tiled with large slabs of ancient stone. The moment your shoes touch them, the murmurs start, lower, heavier, like the voices of grandparents who've been telling the same stories for centuries. One stone grumbles, "At last, someone visits! You'd think we were invisible!" Another joins in, "Invisible? I've been carrying this castle on my back for 500 years, and not one thank you card!" You nearly choke on a laugh, the sound bouncing through the hollow chamber. The princess kneels, brushing her hand across the cold surface. Her eyes close, listening, her whole body stilled in reverence. Then she explains, "These are the foundation stones. They remember everything the castle has seen." You shiver, not from the chill, but from the weight of that thought. Here comes your historical anchor. Across Europe, medieval builders sometimes placed foundation sacrifices, coins, charms, even animal bones beneath new structures, believing it would keep the building strong. Folklorists can't agree whether this was superstition or symbolic insurance. A quirky tidbit? In some castles, workers whispered to the stones before setting them in place, hoping to coax them into loyalty. Maybe this castle just took those whispers seriously. One stone mutters, "I remember when the king tripped on the stairs in front of everyone." Another chuckles, "And I still hold the stain from the cook's soup pot spilled in a hurry 2 centuries ago." You can't help but grin. Even mighty stones reduce history's grandeur into slapstick and spills. But then a heavier, slower voice emerges, vibrating through the chamber. "I remember battles," it rumbles. "The clang of swords above us, the cries of soldiers, the thunder of catapults. I remember when fire licked at our walls and we held steady, refusing to crumble." The chamber seems to vibrate as the words echo, and for a moment you imagine yourself inside a living archive, every stone a page in an unending book. The princess listens with solemnity, her fingers tracing cracks in the slabs as though reading Braille. She whispers, "I used to think I was cursed, that hearing these voices meant I was broken. But down here, I understand. I'm not broken, I'm connected." You notice her face soften, the weight of isolation lifting, if only slightly. It occurs to you that while most people think of history as dusty manuscripts, she experiences it through the ground beneath her toes. It's the kind of insight that would make scholars jealous and very, very confused. Just as the moment grows heavy, a smaller stone interrupts. "Does anyone remember when the Queen's cat got stuck in the pantry? She yowled so loud we still have ringing in our ears." You burst out laughing, and even the princess smirks. Leave it to stones to balance tragedy with comedy, like seasoned storytellers who know their audience needs relief. As you leave the hidden chamber, climbing back toward candlelight, you can still feel the echoes beneath your feet.
The foundation stones hum faintly, a chorus that doesn't stop even when you're gone. And with every step, you realize more fully, this castle isn't just built on stone, it's built on memory, gossip, and the stubborn voices of rocks that refuse to be forgotten. By now, you've grown used to the princess gliding silently beside you, her presence as natural as the hum of cicadas in summer. Yet tonight, she looks uneasy. As the two of you walk through a moonlit gallery, she finally admits something you half expected. She hasn't told anyone else about the pebbles. Not her parents, not the advisors, not even her closest handmaidens. Only you. You pause beside a window, the scent of lavender drifting from the gardens below. Why me? You ask, though you already know the answer. It isn't that you're special, it's that you listened without laughing. Most people don't react well when someone says, "Oh, by the way, the gravel is roasting your footwear." The princess sighs, leaning against the stone wall. "When I was small, I told a friend at court," she confesses. "She told the others, and they mocked me for weeks. Said I was pretending, said I was touched by nonsense. You can picture it all too easily. Children repeating her words in sing-song voices, turning her strangeness into playground entertainment. Kids haven't changed much in 1,000 years, except now they post it online with a shaky video captioned, 'Princess hears Pebbles, local kingdom concerned.'" You both chuckle, but her laugh is tinged with loneliness. "So I stopped talking about it," and the silence felt heavier than the whispers ever did. One pebble near the gallery's edge pipes up cheekily. "She's telling the truth. I was there. Those brats couldn't even tie their own sandals properly." Another adds, "Honestly, if anyone's touched by nonsense, it's the humans who don't listen." You cover your mouth, snickering, which earns you a side-eye from a passing guard. To him, it probably looks like you're giggling at the wall. Classic, "I swear I'm not crazy" moment. Here's where history slides in. In many folk traditions, those who heard the voices of objects, stones, trees, rivers, were considered seers or shamans, sometimes revered, sometimes feared. A quirky tidbit, in certain Slavic tales, children who claimed to hear stones were said to grow into wise rulers, while others were thought to go mad. Scholars still argue whether such stories were cautionary tales or hidden encouragements for children who noticed too much. The debate doesn't matter here. What matters is that the princess has carried both burdens, of being extraordinary and of being doubted. You realize, as you watch her gaze into the moonlit garden, that her confession is less about trust and more about yearning. She doesn't just want someone to share the secret with. She wants someone to believe it's real, someone who understands that strangeness can be a kind of beauty. The moment lingers, tender and fragile, until one stone interrupts with a loud theatrical groan. For the record, we're excellent listeners. She could have just stuck with us. Another stone quickly replies, "Speak for yourself. I doze off halfway through." You burst into laughter, and the princess laughs with you this time, real laughter that seems to lift a shadow from her shoulders. It dawns on you then, this story isn't just about pebbles. It's about the courage to confess, even when the world thinks you're ridiculous. And in that quiet gallery, with the scent of lavender and the murmur of ancient stones, the princess takes her first step toward being less alone. The next evening, the princess leads you through a lesser-used door of the castle, one that creaks as if it hasn't been opened since the last royal decree about table manners. Beyond it lies a winding stair, and you descend with her, each step echoing against cold stone. It feels like the kind of place where a ghost might clear its throat just to see you jump. At the bottom, a cavern yawns open, an underground chamber where walls glisten with damp and little rivulets of water snake toward the center. There, scattered in a natural circle, are hundreds of pebbles. They shimmer faintly, as if catching light that isn't really there. "They've been calling louder," she whispers, her voice bouncing across the chamber. "I couldn't ignore them anymore." As soon as your foot brushes the circle's edge, the murmurs begin. At first, it's like walking into a crowded cafe. You can't catch a single thread. But slowly, voices sharpen. One pebble complains, "My spot is drafty." Another demands, "Tell the princess the riddle. Tell it now." A third sighs dramatically, "Oh, finally, someone new. We've been waiting centuries, and all we got before was a mole." You glance at her, eyebrows raised. She nods, face pale, but resolute. "This is what I wanted you to hear." One pebble, smoother than the rest, clears its throat. "Princess, the earth beneath your kingdom remembers an oath. Long ago, a voice was promised, but forgotten. We have kept it. We have carried it, but only you can unseal it." You tilt your head. You make it sound like she's signed a contract with the fine print carved in limestone. The pebble ignores you. "The oath lies where river meets mountain, guarded by those who forgot their own names." The princess frowns, repeating the words. The chamber grows colder, as though the stones themselves hold their breath. Here's the historical aside. Riddles delivered by objects are not unique. In Norse sagas, swords and skulls alike sometimes whispered clues, often driving heroes on quests that were either divine or disastrous. A quirky tidbit? In medieval Europe, some monks collected stones with unusual shapes and claimed they contained hidden prophecies. Scholars today still argue whether these monks truly believed in the stone's messages or if it was an early form of fundraising. Donate now lest the rock predicts your neighbor's cow will kick the bucket. You're half amused, half unsettled. The princess, though, looks shaken. "If this is true," she murmurs, "my family has kept a secret even from itself." The chamber hums, every pebble vibrating faintly, like a choir of tuning forks. The effect is hypnotic, like being inside a giant beehive that's somehow patient with you. Then one pebble blurts, "Also, could someone bring us a broom? It's dusty down here." Another adds, "Yes, and a cushion. Sitting for centuries is murder on the back." The tension snaps, and you snort with laughter loud enough to echo 3 times around the cavern. Still, the weight of the riddle lingers. Whatever oath the stones remember, it's pulling the princess into something larger than whispers. You can feel it in the chill of the chamber, in the way she squeezes her hands together as if bracing herself, and in the silence that follows when all the pebbles finally fall quiet, waiting for her decision.
The silence after the pebbles finish is almost worse than their chatter. You stand there, shoulder to shoulder with the princess, in a chamber that suddenly feels like the inside of a church that misplaced its hymns. She draws a slow breath, her hands trembling just slightly, and whispers, "River meets mountain. But which river? Which mountain?" Her words echo around the stone walls, and one particularly cheeky pebble mutters, "Well, not the puddle by the stables, obviously." You can't help it. You laugh, which earns you a sharp look from the princess, though her lips twitch like she's suppressing her own grin. You leave the chamber with the echoes still clinging to your ears. By torchlight, you climb back to the castle's corridors, but the riddling words have already taken root. It's the kind of puzzle that demands to be chewed on, like old bread left at the back of the pantry. The next morning, the kingdom buzzes with a fair. Market stalls spring up like mushrooms after rain. Musicians squawk on fiddles, jugglers nearly drop flaming torches, and a goose somehow wins 3 rounds of dice against a pair of traveling monks. You wander with the princess through it all, the ordinary clamor almost absurd after a night of talking stones. At one stall, an old map seller waves you closer. His parchment sheets crackle like autumn leaves. The princess asks softly, "Do you have a map of where the great river touches the mountains?" The man scratches his beard. Depends who you ask. Some say the Silver River kisses the gray peaks. Others insist it's the Amber Stream near the Forgotten Hills. There's your history note. Ancient kingdoms often argued endlessly about their borders, so even maps were more like hopeful suggestions.
A quirky tidbit? One medieval map included Jerusalem drawn as the center of the world, but also labeled sea monsters with names like "Here be the spiky rude one." Scholars still debate whether mapmakers believed in these beasts or just wanted travelers to stop pestering them with, "Are we there yet?" The princess studies the maps, but the truth is murky. "If we choose wrong," she murmurs, "we could end up chasing shadows." You joke lightly. Better shadows than unpaid innkeepers, right? Though a small chill runs through you at the thought. By noon, she pauses by the fountain in the square. Pebbles line the bottom, catching the water's shimmer, and you both lean close. The whispers return, faint but insistent. "Choose carefully. North holds memory, south holds forgetfulness." Another contradicts, "West, always west." And one particularly dramatic voice yells, "Don't listen to Gary. He thinks everything's west." The princess sits back, rubbing her temples. "They're no clearer in daylight." You nod, watching a child toss a copper coin into the fountain. For a heartbeat, the coin glows brighter than the pebbles, as if mocking them. Maybe this oath isn't about geography alone. Maybe it's about memory, promise, and the weight of choices that last centuries. Still, the princess stands, determination sharpening her features. "We'll follow the silver river," she says, voice steady at last. "If it's wrong, we'll know soon enough." And so the fair continues around you, noisy and oblivious, while in the middle of it all, the princess has chosen a path that could unearth secrets her family buried beneath stone, water, and silence.
The journey begins with the Silver River, a winding ribbon of water that seems almost too dramatic for its own good. It glitters in sunlight like it's auditioning for a jewelry commercial, and the air along its banks smells faintly of mint and damp earth. You and the princess follow a narrow footpath beside it, passing fishermen who glance up with mild suspicion, as though sensing royalty shouldn't be slumming it near muddy boots. The princess crouches now and then, scooping up pebbles from the riverbed. Some stay stubbornly silent, but others whisper in quick bursts. One pebble mutters, "Wrong turn ahead." Another sighs dreamily, "Wish I were a skipping stone." A third, crankier voice groans, "Too much algae down here." You almost reply aloud, but catch yourself. No need to look like the eccentric court jester in front of passing travelers. By dusk, the path narrows into a gorge where cliffs rise like library shelves, stacked with centuries of forgotten stories. The wind whistles low and cold. The princess rests her hand on the rock wall, listening. At first, there's nothing. Then, a faint vibration. It's not a whisper exactly, more like the stone humming through its teeth. She tilts her head, eyes wide. It's guiding us. And here's where history sneaks in. Across cultures, rivers often played central roles in myths. Think of the Styx in Greek legend, where souls crossed into the underworld, or the Nile in Egypt, whose floods decided whether a civilization thrived or starved. Rivers weren't just water, they were veins of destiny. A quirky tidbit: the Vikings sometimes buried boats not near the sea, but in grassy fields, believing the soul's river voyage didn't need actual water. Scholars still debate whether they truly thought the afterlife had tides or just enjoyed confusing future archaeologists. By dusk, the princess insists on camping under a leaning oak. The river murmurs nearby, its current loud enough to mask the odd pebble commentary. You build a small fire, though the princess reminds you with mock severity, "Not too big. We're supposed to be subtle seekers, not a traveling beacon." The two of you share dried bread and cheese, and for a while it feels almost normal, like two hikers bickering about who forgot to pack dessert.
Then the pebbles in her pouch start rattling, and one blurts, "Danger, by dawn!" You both freeze. The princess chuckles nervously. They could mean indigestion. You grin. Or they've been listening to too many suspense stories. But neither of you fully relax. The stars spill overhead, a tangled map that's been smudged by an impatient hand. The princess lies awake, turning one pebble between her fingers. "Every voice points to a burden my family tried to silence," she whispers. You think of your own family, the half-forgotten stories, the secrets never spoken out loud, and realize the pebble's riddles might not belong to her alone. Sometime past midnight, the wind shifts. You wake to a sound that isn't the river, isn't the fire, not even the princess's quiet breathing. It's heavier, deliberate, footsteps. From the shadows, a figure pauses at the edge of your campfire's glow, cloak dripping with river water. The stranger tilts their head, and in the silence that follows, even the pebbles fall mute.
The fire crackles softly, but the stranger doesn't move closer. Cloak dripping, face hidden by the hood, they stand as though carved out of the night itself. The princess straightens, her hand brushing the pouch of pebbles like it's both a weapon and a shield. You, meanwhile, find yourself awkwardly clutching half a piece of stale bread, an object that feels about as intimidating as a rolled-up sock. Finally, the figure speaks. The voice is low, rippling like water over stone. The river talks to her, they say, not looking at you, but at the princess, and she listens. The princess swallows, then nods slowly. Yes, the pebbles speak. Do you hear them too? A long pause. Then the hood dips. Once, long ago, before the oath was buried. Your eyebrows shoot up. So you're what? Former pebble therapist? The words slip out before you can stop them, and even the princess bites her lip to keep from laughing. The stranger doesn't laugh, but the silence that follows feels less sharp, as if humor has nudged open a small window in their gloom. The stranger sits near the fire, steam rising as the cloak dries. They reveal little, just that they too were once bound to the river's riddles, and that walking away carried its own curse. The oath was never about one person, they murmur. It binds anyone who listens. History lends a chilling echo here. In many folk tales, oaths were contagious. Think of the Norse Draugr, undead beings cursed not only by their own greed, but sometimes dragging down the living who trespassed near their burial mounds. The quirky tidbit? Some Icelandic sagas mention sheep wandering into these cursed zones and coming out with, let's say, less wool upstairs than they went in with. Scholars still argue whether these tales reflect actual fears or just imaginative shepherd excuses for missing livestock. The princess leans closer. If the oath is shared, then perhaps we can unbind it together. The stranger's lips twitch, almost a smile. Perhaps, but the river takes more than it gives. Be ready to lose something you didn't know you valued. That lands like a stone in your stomach. You glance at the princess, who meets your gaze with steady eyes. For all her gentleness, there's iron under her calm. She won't back down. Later, when the stranger has melted into the shadows again, no goodbye, no footprints left in the dew, you both sit in uneasy silence. The pebbles hum faintly in her pouch, but their words are muffled, as if they know something important just shifted. The princess finally whispers, "Every answer brings more questions." You sigh, poking at the fire. That's life, like peeling onions.
Except with onions, at least you know you're going to cry. She laughs quietly, and that laughter settles you. For a moment, the river sounds less menacing and more like a lullaby. Still, as you both drift toward sleep, the stranger's warning circles in your mind like a hawk. To unbind the oath, something must be lost.
Morning breaks with mist curling off the river, turning everything into a half-finished watercolor. You stretch, your joints complaining like an old knight after a long joust, while the princess is already awake, kneeling by the water with her palms pressed against the stones. The pebbles murmur faintly, like bees drowsy in summer heat, but none offer anything that sounds like a straight answer. You clear your throat. So, big question, do we follow mystery-cloaked guy's warning or pretend last night was just a shared, cheese-induced dream? The princess smirks. You always hope it's the cheese. Then she stands, her dress damp with dew, and announces, "We follow the river north. The oath demands it." The path tightens, flanked by cliffs that loom like stubborn librarians refusing to let go of their books. The river grows rougher, foaming against rocks, louder than before, like it's eager to drown out any whisper you might dare to hear. By midday, you reach an ancient stone bridge, moss stitched across its spine. It's older than the castle walls, older maybe than the kingdom itself. The princess rests her hand against the arch, listening. For a long moment, silence. Then, in a chorus that prickles your skin, the pebbles in her pouch all speak at once. Choose which side to forget. She jerks her hand away, breath caught. Forget what? The river roars louder. A fisherman downstream raises an eyebrow as you both shout at invisible voices. You wave awkwardly at him, pretending everything's fine, just your standard royal pebble conversation outing. Here's where history creeps in. Bridges often carried symbolic weight. In Roman times, crossing a bridge sometimes meant leaving behind impurities, which is why priests guarded them. Quirky tidbit? In medieval England, some bridges had tiny chapels halfway across, where travelers could pray or maybe just rest because bridge tolls were steep. Scholars still debate whether these rituals were sacred or just a sneaky way to collect extra donations. The princess presses forward, one foot on the bridge. Her face is pale, determined. If I cross, something will be lost. Memory, maybe, or a piece of myself. You shift uncomfortably. Well, as long as it's not the memory of where we parked the horse. She glares, but you spot the faintest curve of amusement tugging at her mouth. Together you step onto the bridge. The stones are slick, and halfway across the whispers swell, louder than the river, demanding, "Choose! North forgets past, south forgets future." The princess halts. Her knuckles whiten around the railing. "If I choose wrong," she murmurs. You gently rest a hand on her arm. Maybe it's not about wrong or right. Maybe it's about which burden you're willing to carry. She closes her eyes, breathing deep. Then, with the same calm she used when selecting bread at the fair, she whispers, "I choose the past." The whispers fall silent. The river softens, almost approving. Yet you feel a strange emptiness, like a page torn from a book you hadn't finished reading. The princess staggers, blinking. What was my nursemaid's name?" She presses a hand to her temple. "It's gone. The river took it." You stand together on the far side, the bridge behind you glowing faintly in the mist. The princess is trembling, not from weakness, but from the terrible realization she will never get back what was lost.
The mist lingers as you leave the bridge behind. The princess keeps glancing back, her hand still pressed to her temple, as though the missing memory aches like a phantom limb. You want to comfort her, but what do you say? Hey, at least you remembered your shoes? Not exactly balm for the soul. Instead, you walk beside her in silence until the path widens into meadows dotted with bluebells.
The river curves lazily, slower now, as if it too is recovering from what it just demanded. Birds wheel overhead, their calls sharp in the soft air. The princess finally speaks, her voice small but steady. I knew her face, her laughter. Now it's just blank, like I dreamed her instead of lived with her. She shakes her head. That's what the oath does. It doesn't kill, it erases. You want to argue, but the truth sits heavy. She's right. You both felt it. To distract her, you point toward a curious sight ahead, a circle of standing stones near the riverbank. They rise at odd angles, some leaning, some upright, all carved with faint spirals that look like doodles from a very determined snail. The princess approaches, brushing moss from one spiral, and the stone hums beneath her touch. And here comes history to play its part. Many cultures built stone circles long before written records, some aligned with solstices, others with lunar cycles. A quirky tidbit: one Scottish stone circle was discovered to have been restored in the 1800s by a farmer who added extra stones to make it look prettier. Scholars still argue if his additions ruined the archaeology or created a folk art masterpiece. The princess kneels, pressing her ear to one stone. It murmurs faintly, an echo of the river's whispers. "Memory flows here," it says. Another adds, "But beware the hollow hill." She looks up sharply. The oath isn't tied to the river alone. It spreads underground. You run a hand along the stone, hoping for something more helpful, like directions to the nearest bakery. Instead, it vibrates and mutters, "The hill eats names." Great, a geography lesson from rocks, just what I needed. The princess chuckles, tension easing for a heartbeat. That night, you camp among the stones. The circle shields you from the wind, but it also feels like sleeping inside a giant open mouth waiting to close. The pebbles in her pouch grow restless, rattling, whispering fragments of prophecy. The hill, the heart, the oath waits below. You turn to her. So the oath isn't in the river, it's in the earth itself. She nods slowly, eyes glinting in firelight. The hollow hill, that's where the truth lies. And in the uneasy quiet that follows, you can't shake the sense that while the princess has lost a memory, the earth has just gained you both as players in a game that was waiting centuries for new contestants.
By dawn, the meadow glistens with dew, and the standing stones cast long shadows like solemn guardians. The princess rises quickly, as if the stones themselves had whispered her awake. You shuffle after her, rubbing sleep from your eyes and mumbling something about needing coffee, though in this world, the closest thing you'll get is probably river water flavored with twigs. The path turns rugged, winding toward the hills that hunch on the horizon. Their slopes are pocked with caves and grassy mounds, the kind of place where children dare each other to spend a night and adults politely avoid after sunset. The princess grips the pouch of pebbles, listening as they vibrate with faint chatter. "The hill eats names," one repeats mournfully. Another giggles, but burps them later sometimes. You can't help snorting at that, and the princess shakes her head, though her lips twitch with the ghost of a smile. As you climb, the air changes, cooler, heavier, carrying the scent of damp soil. The ground feels hollow beneath your boots, as though you're walking on a drum skin stretched too thin. History's shadow falls here too. Across Europe, hollow hills or burial mounds were believed to house the otherworld. Folklore painted them as entrances to fairy realms or tombs where kings slumbered until their return. A quirky tidbit?
Some legends say if you sit on such a hill at midsummer, you might hear fairy music, but scholars still argue whether that was a poetic metaphor or just villagers misinterpreting drunk fiddlers in the distance. The princess pauses before a cleft in the hillside, dark as an unblinking eye. She whispers, "This is it." The pebbles hum in agreement, and one mutters, "Don't trip, it ruins the mood." You duck inside, the cave swallowing daylight. The walls glisten with minerals, glowing faintly like embers buried in ash. Strange carvings spiral across the stone, runes, or maybe just the world's fanciest doodles. The deeper you go, the louder the whispers become. They're not just in her pouch anymore. They leak from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Words crowd in on you, a tide of murmurs that tangle into something almost coherent. To break the oath, speak the name that cannot be spoken. The princess stops dead, clutching the pouch to her chest. A name that cannot be spoken? That's impossible. You shrug weakly. Well, so was talking Pebbles, and yet here we are. She exhales, shaky but determined. If the hill eats names, then somewhere inside it, it keeps them. And one of those names is the key. The cave air thickens, pressing against your lungs. Shadows writhe across the stone, and the whispers swell until they sound almost like chanting. You realize, with a prickling down your spine, that this isn't just a cave. It's a vault of memory, a treasury of names swallowed by the earth itself. And tonight, it feels like the vault has decided to open its doors for you.
The vault breathes around you. At least that's how it feels. The air moves in slow pulses, like the hill itself is inhaling and exhaling. The princess tightens her grip on your sleeve, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's alive." You nod, though it's more reflex than agreement. Alive, sure, but hopefully not hungry. A pebble in her pouch promptly mutters, "Hungry," which does absolutely nothing for your nerves. The chamber deepens, walls dripping with mineral sheen. In the glow of your torch, you see them. Thousands of names scratched into the stone, overlapping in layers like desperate graffiti. Some are crisp, others worn to smudges, as if the rock itself tried to forget. The princess brushes her fingers across one and flinches. It's warm. Here's where folklore strolls in with muddy boots. Names, across cultures, carried power. To know someone's true name was to hold sway over them. Think of Rumpelstiltskin, or the Egyptian belief that erasing a name erased the person's afterlife. A quirky tidbit? Some medieval folks gave their children deliberately awkward nicknames, like Ugly or Piggy, believing it would confuse spirits trying to steal them. Scholars still argue if this was superstition or just parents with a questionable sense of humor. The princess kneels, listening. One of these names is the unspeakable one, the key. The whispers thrum louder, weaving together until you hear snatches of sentences. Speak us, free us, forget us. You swallow. So, which name do we pick? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo? She shoots you a look, though her lips twitch with weary amusement. This isn't a game. And yet, maybe it is. The chamber feels like a riddle given form, a cruel puzzle box where the wrong choice means losing more than memory. The princess closes her eyes, holding a pebble to her ear. It vibrates and hisses, "Not me, not me," as though terrified of being chosen. Another shouts, "Pick me!" in a voice so eager it feels like a trap. You crouch beside her, trying to sound braver than you feel. Maybe it's not about speaking the right name. Maybe it's about daring to speak at all. The torchlight flickers. The princess draws in a steady breath,
her hand hovering over the wall of names. The air thickens, heavy with anticipation, as if the hill itself leans closer, waiting to see if she'll risk her voice against centuries of silence. The princess's hand trembles just above the stone. You can feel the vault's pressure building like a held breath that could burst your eardrums. The whispers crescendo, some coaxing, some mocking, some screaming nonsense just to fill the void. It's like being stuck in a room where every radio is tuned to a different station, and none of them play decent music. Finally, she presses her palm to one carved name. The letters glow faintly, a soft silver that pulses against her skin. She opens her mouth, and you brace yourself. But when she tries to speak, no sound comes out. Her lips move, her throat strains, yet the name dissolves before it reaches the air. Her eyes widen. It's unspeakable. The pebbles shiver in her pouch, rattling like coins in an angry tax collector's purse. One mutters, "Wrong one," while another groans, "Oh, not this again." She pulls back, shaking. You grip her shoulders gently. "Hey, you're still here. The hill didn't eat you. Yet." The joke falls flat, but at least it cracks her tension for half a heartbeat. The whispers change then, lower, heavier. They seep from the ground itself, words too big to belong to pebbles or walls. To speak the unspeakable, you must give your own name. Her face drains of color. My name? History leans in here. Across myths, giving your true name was the ultimate surrender. In some traditions, gods hid their real names to protect themselves. Quirky tidbit? Folklorists say one Egyptian myth tells of Isis tricking Ra by forcing him to reveal his secret name, effectively blackmailing him into sharing divine power. Scholars still argue whether this was empowerment or just the oldest example of identity theft. The princess looks at you, her eyes wet but steady. If I give my name, I might lose myself. You nod slowly. But if you don't, the oath holds forever. The chamber vibrates, dust falling from the ceiling. The pressure mounts, pushing at your chest, your skull. You swear the air is about to crack. The princess clutches your hand, then draws herself tall, voice barely above a whisper. My name is... The moment hangs, trembling, before she speaks it out loud. The hill shudders, and every carved name ignites at once in a blinding cascade of light.
The vault erupts in brilliance, so fierce you clamp your eyes shut. But even then, the light sears patterns against your lids. It's not just brightness, it's the weight of centuries lifting, the silence cracking apart like old plaster. The princess's name hangs in the air, shimmering, echoing, as if the stone itself repeats it over and over in tones of awe and relief. You open your eyes to see the names carved on the walls peeling away like bark, drifting upward as glowing dust. The whispers soften, not pleading now, but sighing. One murmurs, "Free." Another hums, "At last." The princess sways. You grab her elbow before she tips. Her face is pale, but her eyes shine with something fierce. "It worked," she whispers, though her voice sounds thinner, as if the hill took a slice of her to make the trade. Then comes the sound, a low, groaning exhale, the hill itself releasing the burden of its vow. The ground trembles, but not in menace, more like the stretch of something long bound finally loosening its chains. Here's the strange part. No treasure bursts from the earth, no glittering crown descends, just stillness. Folklore is messy that way. People expect rewards, gold, jewels, at least a nice fruit basket. Yet many tales end with nothing but survival. A quirky example? Some Norse myths claim heroes were rewarded with a really good funeral. Scholars still bicker whether these endings are cautionary tales or just proof that storytellers ran out of budget for a grand finale. The princess lets out a shaky laugh. All that for silence? You chuckle, though your chest aches with exhaustion. Silence is underrated.
Try listening to modern politics if you disagree. The pebbles in her pouch wriggle, then fall utterly quiet. For the first time, they're just stones. She lifts one, turns it over, then drops it back with a wistful smile. Above, the vault ceiling cracks open, revealing a thin shaft of moonlight. Cool air spills down, carrying the smell of grass and night. You climb together, each step slower, heavier, but steady. When you finally crawl out, the hill no longer hums. It simply rests, as though satisfied. The princess kneels in the grass, pressing her palms to the earth. I gave it my name, but I think I kept myself. And maybe that's the gift. Not jewels, not power, but freedom. The kind of freedom that lets her walk into tomorrow lighter, even if her name now echoes in stone forever. You settle beside her, staring at the sky peppered with stars. For once, the night is quiet. Blessedly, impossibly quiet.
Now the story slows, drifting into hush. The hill rests behind you, its long-kept secret finally released, and the world feels softer, lighter, easier to breathe in. You lie back in the cool grass, the scent of earth rising gently, the night air stroking your skin like the calm hand of an old friend. Your thoughts, once noisy as those whispering pebbles, begin to scatter, fading like dust in moonlight. The stars above twinkle lazily, patient as ever, unconcerned with vows or names or ancient burdens. Their steady shine reminds you that not every mystery demands solving, that sometimes it is enough simply to rest beneath the sky. The princess's breathing evens out beside you, slow and calm, as though the earth itself rocks her towards sleep. You match your breaths with hers. Inhale, exhale, letting the rhythm carry you deeper into stillness. Imagine the ground beneath as a vast cradle, holding you safely, whispering nothing at all. Only silence, sweet and complete. The kind of silence that wraps around you like a blanket, protecting you from the day's weight, easing every restless thought into quiet surrender. And now your body loosens, inch by inch. Your shoulders sink, your arms soften, your legs grow heavy. Even your eyelids feel like they're floating shut, content to close on their own. The night asks for nothing from you. No oaths, no quests, no names to give away. Only this: to rest, to drift, to let go. So you do. Slowly, gently, fully. Good night, dreamer. Sleep well, sleep well, sleep well, sleep